All right, for more, we are joined by renowned criminal defense attorney Mark Geragos. And of course, you'll remember he has represented so many major figures in court, including the Menendez brothers, Mike Tyson, Michael Jackson, Colin Kaepernick, Hunter Biden, previously Sean Diddy Combs. The list goes on. So, Mark, so good to have you with us. I'm so interested in your take on this very high-profile case because we see the sticking point of this initial search of Mangione. The defense argues that this happened without a warrant, before he was read his rights, that it was 20 minutes of questioning before he was informed of that right to remain silent. How crucial are those 20 minutes?
Very crucial. And by the way, you had a legal analyst for NewsNation, and I would agree with her. In almost every case, you would say to yourself, all of this stuff is clearly coming in and the defense is going through the motions. This may be the one exception, even though it is extremely high profile. And the reason is you in your package had that 911 call. The 911 operator kind of chuckled as she says it's not really an emergency. So one of the reasons that there have been so many witnesses called, and I don't know if it was mentioned, but there have been, and there are at least 20 some odd witnesses that are scheduled to testify, people inside of the place where he was detained and later arrested, body cam video showing what was going on, and all kinds of other indicia that there was not an emergency here. If that's the case, the fact that the backpack was searched, there was no emergency without a search warrant. If this were a lesser high-profile case, I would tell you that it was touch and go as to whether the prosecution could make this search make their compelling argument to his honor, because this really is not what's called an exigent circumstances search. They have a real hard time telling the judge they needed to do it. They couldn't have gotten a warrant.
Wow. I mean, so those officers went through the backpack that Mangione had with him. They found that 9mm handgun. They say that matched the weapon that was used in the murder. They found a notebook detailing his alleged intentions, his writings filled with disdain for health insurers. Is this evidence at risk of being thrown out entirely, in your opinion? And do you think that's going to have a major impact on this case?
Normally, I would tell you the mother of the judge hasn't been born that was going to throw this evidence out. However, in this case, it's pretty hard to get around some of the in real time evidence that this was not an emergency, that this was not a situation that they had to act without a warrant. I mean, they took their time. They are obviously, I think, going to testify, they being law enforcement, that they didn't want to, that there were people there, they were worried about the safety of the others there, and I can understand that. But at the same time, clearly, this did not rise to the level of an emergency situation. If it isn't an emergency situation, that's why we have the Fourth Amendment, right against search and seizures that are unlawful. There was no search warrant. Yes, if this evidence is excluded, that is a very, very damaging ruling for the prosecution. Let me play out one more thing. For your listeners, if they're wondering, there is both a state doctrine here, meaning a state prosecution. You're showing a picture of Karen Agnifilo with Luigi there. And there's a federal prosecution. The standards are different and the state of the law is different under New York state law versus the federal in terms of inevitable discovery. One of the things that the prosecution has kind of argued is a first cousin of inevitable discovery, namely they would have gotten it anyway. That, as I understand it under New York law, is not going to fly. So that really does, for the prosecutors, one of the reasons they're really throwing everything at this motion is that it's a make or break motion for them.
Absolutely.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.